The desert sun was cruel that morning, painting the horizon in shades of gold and dust. James Callahan, a middle-aged rancher with weathered hands and tired eyes, rode slowly across his land. His ranch was vast, stretching for miles of dry fields and broken fences. But though the land was wide, his life was empty. His wife had passed years ago from fever, and his only son had gone east to seek work, leaving James with nothing but cattle, silence, and the ghosts of memories. He lived with a loneliness that echoed louder than the coyotes at night. As he rode past a cluster of mesquite trees, James's horse suddenly stopped, ears twitching. That's when he saw it. At first, he thought it was a ragged doll hung up as some cruel warning. But as his horse edged closer, his chest tightened. It was no doll. A young Apache girl, barely 12, maybe 13, was dangling by her wrists, tied to a low branch. Her body was limp, her face smeared with dust and tears. Around her neck hung a crude wooden sign, scrawled in charcoal. "White man don't forgive." James's breath caught in his throat. For a moment, he froze, torn between fear and sorrow. He knew the history. Settlers and Apaches had lived in blood and mistrust for decades. He had lost cattle, neighbors had lost lives, and vengeance had become a language spoken on both sides. But this child, she wasn't an enemy. She was barely alive. He leapt from his horse, cutting her free with trembling hands. She fell into his arms, so light it felt like holding a bundle of twigs. Her breathing was shallow, her pulse faint, but there was life. James carried her back to his ranch, whispering softly, "Hold on, little one. Hold on." For days, she drifted between life and death. James nursed her with water, broth, and the same care he once gave his sick wife. She would wake at night, thrashing and crying out in Apache words he couldn't understand. Sometimes, she recoiled from him, terror in her eyes. The sign still haunted him, "White man don't forgive." But James did forgive. More than that, he protected. One evening, as he sat by her bedside, she finally spoke in broken English. Her name was Nayland. She told him her family had been attacked by men who wore the same boots and hats as James. Settlers. Her parents were gone, her little brother taken. She had run, but those same men had caught her, hung her as a warning to both whites and Apaches alike. Her words stabbed James like knives. He had thought he knew cruelty, but this was evil. As the weeks passed, something softened in the rancher's heart. He fixed her shoes with old leather, cooked her meals, even carved her a small wooden horse to make her smile. Slowly, her fear melted. She began to follow him around the ranch, watching him mend fences, feed cattle, and water the crops. For the first time in years, James felt something stir inside him, a purpose beyond survival. But whispers began to spread in town. Neighbors noticed the girl. Men muttered that James was harboring one of them. Old hatreds flared. One night, as James returned from town, he found his barn burning, flames tearing through the wood. Nayland stood outside, clutching the little wooden horse he had carved, tears streaming down her face. A sign was nailed to the barn door. "Traitor." James fell to his knees, the fire reflecting in his eyes. Everything he had built, gone. But when he looked at Nayland, shaking and terrified, he realized something greater. The barn didn't matter. She did. He placed his hands firmly on her shoulders and said, "They took everything from me before. I won't let them take you." In that moment, the lonely rancher who once lived only for his cattle and silence found his reason to fight. The following days were hard. They slept under the stars, worked the land together, and built what little they could from the ashes. Word reached the Apache camp about James. Some came to see if it was true, if a white man had truly risked his life for one of their own. At first, they came with suspicion. But when they saw Nayland run to James, clutching his hand, calling him "Father," something shifted. Trust, fragile but real, began to form. James's ranch became more than a home, it became a bridge. Apache children played on his land, and settlers slowly saw there could be peace, even if only in small steps. Years later, when Nayland grew into a strong young woman, she spoke often about that day under the mesquite tree. She said, "I thought my life would end with a sign that said, 'White man don't forgive.' But instead, I found a man who showed me that kindness forgives everything." And James, once a lonely rancher with nothing but sorrow, found himself with a daughter, a family, and a legacy that would outlive the fires of hate.